This is episode 211 of the Super League Pod. Find out this week if a bumper week of hilarious match reviews is enough to avert a Mark rant at Wigan's failings in the capital. I pull an Escray and miss an open try line of a pun for one game, and we have plenty to discuss when it comes to lions, ducks and unicorns. Throw in the odd chunder and a longboat, and you're in for a jam-packed show. Prepare yourselves, it's SLP time. So hello everyone, it's episode 211 of the Super League Pod. You've got for you this week me, Mark, and I'm joined by Tim G. How's it going, Tim? Welcome back.
Yes, yeah, well, nice to be back. Good evening.
Yeah. Have you been busy since you last been on the show? Coventry done okay?
Yes, yeah, did very well. Really enjoyed that game. That came at the end of a rather super weekend and, well, long weekend because it was half term. So we had 2 days off. Actually, so I was off from the Wednesday and saw Heather's parents, met them for a meal on the Wednesday night up in London, which was very nice. And then on the Thursday and Friday, we went down to Brighton on holiday, which was brilliant.
Of course,
had
you know
a really
Brighton
nice
well. It's
couple of
one
days.
of your old stomping grounds.
Yeah, used to live down there, and saw my granddad as well while we were down there, which was nice. He was on good form, 92, and still walks 2 miles a day.
Excellent.
Goes to Waitrose, gets his paper and his coffee, marches back down the seafront.
There's the secret to a long life: sea air and 2 miles a day.
Yeah, not far off. And then went to Brentford on the Saturday, who won 5-2 against Hull City, and then up to Coventry on the Sunday and for that brilliant game against Newcastle.
So, I mean, last year we had some bright moments with the Bears, but do you think, did that feel like, because we haven't had a chance to talk to you about it really, did it feel like kind of the most significant win ever for the club?
I think so. It definitely did. I think just if you look at the players in that squad from Newcastle and the names and the known names, and the internationals that are playing in that team against, no disrespect to the players from Keighley and Hunslet in particular last year, but this squad certainly on paper was a much more enhanced proposition. When you're playing against Liam Finn and Marginet in the halves and Misi Talapapa, it's not quite the same. So it was definitely big, and just the manner of the victory, that it was such a team sort of fought victory. There wasn't an individual performance really that stood out in the respect. It was just everybody was contributing, and it was just brilliant. And even there was one point, there was a break right at the end where I did think that it could be a fairy tale ending the other way, and it was always going to go horribly wrong. But luckily, it was just the defence just held together, and they kept going, and then the celebrations were good fun afterwards.
Excellent stuff. We should mention this episode is sponsored by Little Warden. If you have a website, then visit littlewarden.com and see what they can do to help you. They can help you with domain expiration checks, redirects, and all sorts of other important background web stuff that they'll make simple for you. Little Warden, monitoring the tedious. Right, so we've got quite a bit of news this week from all across the world of rugby league. So
yeah, it's news week.
it's news week, but then we've still got round 4 of the Super League, where we're going to cover some upsets, some maybe surprise results. A middle of the table team beating a top of the table team, a promoted team beating the champions. There's lots to go through at that junction, and then we're going to got the results from the Championship and League One as well, and then we'll see if I do better than my 50% out in last week in the predictions, Tim, when we get to that stage of the show. I just want to give some shout outs to kick things off before we crack on to the news, though. So, this week people might have picked up on Friday, we released an SLP short. And, Dave Woods, the BBC commentator, was kind enough to give up some of his time to speak to Sarah. So go back and check out that SLP short. It was really interesting stuff. They covered a wide range of topics. And I would say Dave's views on some of the financial troubles clubs have and kind of what clubs need to maybe want to aim for is very interesting. So that's worth a listen. I want to thank as well another nice listener gift that I received during the week. Tim, I promise that one of you guys can get the next bottle of gin that comes our way. But thanks to Paul Chamberlain this week for sending a gift. It was really nice to meet Paul at the Broncos game as well. He's a really funny guy, and we've known that from his match reviews. But he's a nice guy. I thought he had like a northern background, and then his family was from up north, but then
an exile of some description. Yeah,
or, second generation exile or something like that. But no, it turns out not at all. So that was interesting to learn about, and how he came about the game in the 80s with the London Crusaders and that sort of stuff. And so that was really nice. And we had quite a bunch together, really, at different times. Dave Cantrell was with us, Ian Gatwood and Paul Campbell as well. London fans. Paul was there. And Carsten as well. He flew in from Switzerland for the game. The flight attendants people and the staff at the airport didn't understand how he was going on a flight with no luggage whatsoever. Why that was? He was like, well, I'm just going to watch a game of rugby and then I'm coming back. So there you go. He was in and out. We worked out that his flights were probably only about 10 or 15 quid more expensive than the tank of petrol that I put in my car. So, so that was really cool to see all of those guys, particularly Paul Chamberlain. First time meeting him, and he's been a great supporter of the show. More notably with his match reviews and stuff over the last 18 months or so. And also Paul Campbell, who I've not seen in person for a few years, so it was really nice to catch up. He was with his younger daughter. That one's Megan, isn't it? I think, if I remember right. I apologise if not. But yeah, very much more grown up than last time I saw her. So really nice to see those guys and catch up.
Is she now taller than her dad?
Well, yeah, obviously. I think now she doesn't need heels to be taller. I think is the transition of time rather than anything else. I mean.
Does he need heels though? Is that the next thing?
I think he already wears them and still. No, but it was really great catching up with Paul. That was nice, and I was really pleased for those guys. That London got the win, even though I was really disappointed for myself that Wigan did not. And final shout out goes to Dr. Bob, who made a donation to us this week. Listen out at the end of the show for how you guys can support us if you want to throw some money into the coffers for SLP. But thanks to Dr. Bob Phillips, who sponsored last week's show on behalf of charity, Candlelighters, and this week sent in a donation as well. So thanks, Dr. Bob, for that. That's kind of what I've got for the opening of the show. I think we need to move on to what might take a while to go through, this week's news.
Let's go for it. So to start this week's news, Great Britain's return to the international calendar has been confirmed after plans for a Lions tour later this year were confirmed. A 4-match tour will see the Lions travel to New Zealand and Papua New Guinea to take on the Kiwis twice, as well as games against the Comores and the World Cup semi-finalists Tonga. What do you make of this one?
Well, it's been a long time in coming, hasn't it, this announcement? And
it's been promised and promised and promised, and finally we get it.
That's right, yeah. So we're probably... can't remember who would have been talking about when it was announced.
I think Nigel Wood promised it at some point.
But no, I mean on our show, because it will have been ages ago.
Right, yeah.
But probably at the time we said, yeah, it's great. Great Britain's a big brand. It helps. It's recognisable. It'll help, kind of from a PR point of view. There's
that's evidenced by the fact it's been on every radio bulletin I've heard this evening.
Exactly, yeah. So there's good in that. We're going to hear more details probably by the time you're listening to this show, the full kind of makeup of when the fixtures will be and where they'll be played, and what might go alongside it, because I think Australia might get some games not against Great Britain but against maybe Tonga, in that, or New Zealand, in that sort of mix of games. So we'll see all that, the international window sort of firmed up for 2019. It's pretty exciting. I think it's weird that we're only going to play 2 games against New Zealand, so you can't have like a decisive winner necessarily. If one wins each, there's no real series winner. But then it doesn't really matter, because in a way, it's an exhibition tour inside, sort of.
Yeah, and we've played New Zealand. Well, England has played New Zealand enough times that I don't think anyone really wants to see an extra one.
That's a fair shout, yeah. And that sort of brings to the other conversation point, which I think maybe get your view on, which is who's going to be in this side outside of, England, but with a bit of blue on that white and red shirt.
I think they're going to take Regan Grace as a token water carrier.
Nonsense. Morgan Knowles is far more likely to be in there than Regan Grace from that Wales squad.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Even though, of course, none of them. But, well,
I think
depends on the qualification, I suppose.
I think that
if the qualification was there to have played for Wales in the last 12 months.
Yeah. I think there's 5 or 6 British
but
that are miles ahead of Regan Grace.
I think there are, but I don't think that I think there'll be a political element to the selection that they'll have to throw in a Welsh and Irish and a Scots selection, so they might well end up with. Do you think Lachlan Coote, of course, could make it from a Scottish point of view?
Well, yeah, that's I think that's a more realistic show than Regan Grace. Yeah, I think there's maybe even someone like a Loomis, Carthy Scarsbrook or Michael McAlorum. I know that in their positions they're down the pecking order, but if injuries mount and that sort of stuff, then there it's in the conversation as someone like Regan Grace is, I think. Kevin Sinfield said they're not going to do that. They're going to select the best 24 or whatever it's going to be size squad, because it's not a proper tour, is it? It's just a 4-game series. There's no midweek matches, so 23, 24 players. The best eligible 23, 24 players are going to get selected, and that's what they've said, isn't it? You don't believe that?
Yeah, I don't believe that. I think there'll be at least one. We're only taking you because of your nationality selection. I'm sort of conflicted. Part of me thinks that's a good idea. Part of me thinks that actually no, it needs to just be the England squad plus Lachlan Coote.
If it was a 10-game tour and you had 5 or 6 games that weren't test
if it was
matches,
like the Lions tour from rugby union, where you've got those midweek games and you've got enough, you need players who are just going to be able to play and not be necessarily the best, but they're going to ones that can just stay fit on tour and be able to come in if needed, then
yeah, that's how you'd do it. Then you'd have your 40-man squad, you'd have your midweek side and your weekend side and that sort of stuff. But that isn't how the rugby league world works these days. So I say pick your best side, win as many of the games as you can, and hopefully get a bit of good publicity off the back of that. Spin that into England playing against Australia next year in England. Get tickets sold well in advance for that, and build some excitement for that with an England side that'll come off the back of a Great Britain tour with probably quite a lot of representation, and quite a lot of players playing in the NRL too. I think that's how you spin this. That's how you work this. So that's what I'd expect and hope to see, to be honest, when it's only a 4-game tour.
And Wayne Bennett as coach is the best possible option.
From who is it within the sport of rugby league and around the international game right now, it seems the most reasonable, doesn't it? But probably as well because it's a bridging. It's between the World Cups. If it was just after a World Cup, so if it was played last year, for example, as Great Britain, then Great Britain could have a standalone coach. But I think it would disadvantage England if England's players weren't being exposed to England's coaches 2 years before a World Cup. So
I mean, if you're looking on a basis of the 4 national team coaches, he's probably the best. But I mean, it'd be interesting to see if, for example, John Keir is in and around the setup there.
I think that might be a
someone,
way that they
from,
go,
from,
that they bring in some backroom people from the other nations to give them representation within the.
Yeah, if you're an Irish physio, you've got a good chance.
Well, you're probably English anyway. You're probably from Wigan or Leeds or Warrington or St Helens anyway, aren't you? Anyway, shall we move on to Widnes then?